ध्यायेत् शारदचन्द्रसुन्दरमुखम् ताम्रारविन्देक्षणम् भक्ताभीष्टवराभयप्रदकरम् कौपीनमात्रोज्ज्वलम् स्वात्मानन्दरसानुभूतिविवशम् सर्वानवद्याङ्गकम् श्रीमन्तं श्रीरमणेश्वरं गुरुवरं योगासनाध्यासितम् ध्यायेत् श्रीरमणेश्वरम् ध्यायेत् श्रीरमणेश्वरम् ध्यायेत् श्रीरमणेश्वरम् हृदयकुहरमध्ये केवलम् ब्रह्ममात्रम् यहमहमिति साक्षादात्मरूपेण भाति हृदि विषमनसा स्वं चिन्वतामच्युतव पवनचलनरोधा आत्मनिष्ठो भवत्वम्। Namo Ramana. We will start this Friday evening Atma Vichara session by listening to Bhagavan's Upadesham. As usual, we have been reading from the book Ramana Answers, Self-Enquiry 1900 to 1950, a compilation of all the answers by Master on the subject matter of Atma Vichara, self-enquiry, by our founder president Sri A.R. Natarajanji. After listening to Bhagavan's Upadesham, we will contemplate on that, and then we will have a 20 minutes Atma Vichara session, following which there will be a discussion on the Ramana Gita, which also talks about the Atma Vichara by our president, Dr. Sharda Akka. And following which we can have any questions if there are there, and then we have the concluding prayers. In the series of questions that we have been looking upon, last week we saw Bhagavan himself explaining who am I and how is it to be done, how is it to be found. In the next question that the devotee puts to Bhagavan, the question that is asked is, can we think without mind? There is a question put by the devotee, can we think without mind? To which Bhagavan answers, thought may be like any other activities, not disturbing to the supreme consciousness. I repeat Bhagavan's answers. Thought may be like any other activities, not disturbing supreme consciousness. This is in response to the question, can we think without mind? Bhagavan always, and all the great ones, Bhagavan says, ask us to get to the sahaja, the natural state. So here the question that is being asked is, can we think without the mind? If that question is being asked, then it is being asked by someone who thinks that thought is important, or then there is something called mind, somebody who is believing in it and wants and is not aware of the mind or the thinker, but wants to know from somebody what one should do. Can that happen or not happen? Whereas Bhagavan very beautifully brings the attention back to the sahaja, the natural state. Bhagavan always makes us get back to the natural state. He says, in the natural state, the supreme consciousness is not disturbed, whether any thought activities happen or not happen. So he brings us to that clarity. So which makes us see what sahaja is and what Bhagavan has explained about sahaja in talks or any other thing. And I was just looking at some of the talks which Bhagavan gives clarity about this sahaja. So this is talk number 17. There Bhagavan is asked this question, does Maharshi enter the Nirvikalpa Samadhi? That is a question being put by the devotee. Does Maharshi enter the Nirvikalpa Samadhi? To which Bhagavan says, if the eyes are closed, it is Nirvikalpa. If open, it is though differentiated, still in absolute repose. He puts it in a bracket. If open, it is within bracket, though differentiated, still in absolute repose, called Savikalpa. The ever-present state is the natural state, Sahaja. So this very clearly says that both in the state of Nirvikalpa, where the eyes are closed and there is no differentiation, and where the state where is Savikalpa, where the eyes are open, though there are differentiation, one is in absolute repose, that is the Savikalpa. But the ever-present state, Bhagavan says, is neither Nirvikalpa nor Savikalpa, but the natural state, Sahaja. So both in this Nirvikalpa and Savikalpa, there is somebody who is thinking there is an eyes that has to be closed, there is objects to be seen, and he is entering into her state by closing the eyes and discarding all the objects and entering that object-free state of Nirvikalpa. And in the person who has kept his eyes open, even though there is differentiation and is not attending to it, is in Savikalpa. But there is this idea still that I have kept my eyes open and there are so many differentiations, still I am in the repose and things like that. But the ever-present state, Bhagavan says, is the natural state of Sahaja. And Bhagavan explains why Sahaja is very important in another question where a devotee asks. I will take only part of the answer which Bhagavan has given in talk number 54. Devotee asks, how does a grihastha, householder, fare in the scheme of moksha, liberation? Bhagavan says here very beautifully, he comes to all of our rescue. He says here, the environment never abandons you according to your desire. Look at me, I left home. Look at yourself. You have come here leaving the home environment. What do you find here? Is this different from what you left? Even if one is immersed in Nirvikalpa Samadhi for years together, when he emerges from it, he will find himself in the environment which he is bound to have. That is the reason for the Acharya emphasizing Sahaja Samadhi in preference to Nirvikalpa Samadhi in his excellent work, Viveka Chudamani. So here Bhagavan is referring to the work of Adi Shankara in the Viveka Chudamani and stressing why Sahaja Samadhi is very, very important. So if something is very, very natural, Sahaja, if that is not being perceived, or it is something we feel that it is not something which belongs to us yet, and therefore we need to do something, then we are absolutely assuming some other position other than that natural thing. And therefore we feel the need to know, the need to do. And Bhagavan says, no matter, even if you get into any of those states of Nirvikalpa or Savikalpa, the environment is going to be there. He's saying it. So within this environment, how the self is the natural, is the way that we need to go. It's all the self. There is only the self. But as long as we are holding on to something else, we feel these differentiations. And therefore, we feel that we are in the world, we need to get back to meditation, I need to close my eyes, get back to Nirvikalpa Samadhi. But then Bhagavan says, after this whole Nirvikalpa Samadhi is over, you will again get back to this environment, isn't it? So has it given us that freedom, that absolute freedom that we are looking for? Why are we doing any of these things? It is only to be free, to be happy, to be experiencing that state where there is absolutely no disturbance, which Bhagavan very beautifully talks in 57, talk number 57. He says that some people may claim that the self is always established, and therefore when we hear, we enter into that state, but then we may stay in that state. When we come out of it, the dukkha has not gone away. The dukkha nivritti has not happened. So he talks about that. And he also talks about some people who tell that only when the vasanas go away, then only we have that absolute state. So when we do manana and all the vasanas are kind of removed for a moment, then we may experience that. So again, we find that when we get back to normal state, the environment that Bhagavan is talking about, then we are found that we are still having the dukkha. So as Akka has been talking in the Ramana Gita, she's been telling that what we have as intermittent experience is, I forgot the word which Bhagavan has mentioned there. Akka, can you help me please?
Which one? In Ramana Gita?
Yeah, intermittent state Bhagavan uses.
Abhyasa, he says, only Abhyasa.
Abhyasa.
Abhyasa, during practice, he calls it only Abhyasa. And then when it is steady, it is Sahaja.
Yeah, when it is steady, he says Sahaja. So Bhagavan is asking us to get back to that Sahaja state. So until that, any intermittent experience that we may have, the only thing that we need to see is that the Atma Vichara has to continue, because there is still a sense of identification with something, that identity, that identification with an identity as I. More precisely, I am this body. That is what is the identity which is there. And therefore, as long as that is there, Bhagavan asks us to keep doing Atma Vichara. And as we do Atma Vichara, more and more Atma Vichara, Bhagavan assures that the mind will gain enough strength to remain in the Sahaja. So until that time, we should continue to do Atma Vichara. So this makes us very clear how long I should do Atma Vichara. If there is a question for us, and it is very, very clear that we need not have to have any doubt whether the Atma Vichara will take us to the Sahaja. It will, Bhagavan assures. In due course, it will take us to that. And he also assures that as long as there is this differentiation, this identity with the individuality is there, as long as we are trying to do, we are saying we are having a Vikalpa Samadhi or Savikalpa Samadhi, and all of these things are still running, then also we should continue to inquire to whom is this, who am I, and get back to the Sahaja. So that is what Bhagavan is saying, because Bhagavan is very clear that when we enter that supreme consciousness, there is not going to be any disturbance, which Bhagavan goes on to say here, right? In this, he calls it as dukkha nivritti. And there will be no dukkha once we reach that Sahaja. So until that time, we should continue to do this Atma Vichara, which is the most important thing. That is the takeaway from this question answer. Can we think without mind? The Bhagavan says, thought may be like any other activity, not disturbing to the supreme consciousness. So when we reach the Sahaja, any activity may keep going, and there will be seen to be no disturbance to that super consciousness or to that self. So until we reach that state, then we should continue to practice Atma Vichara. In Atma Vichara, no matter how many thoughts come and whatever may be the quality of the thought, whether it is good, bad, ugly, we don't differentiate them. It is all the same, which is making us move on from our Sahaja. So therefore, we diligently inquire to whom is this thought. And the answer obviously will come that it is for me, not for anybody else. Thereupon, we need to inquire, who am I? What do I really refer to as I? And last time we saw Bhagavan, how he takes us, we are not the body, we are not the mind, we are not the intellect. And he takes us that we are the substrate which is helping us see the waking, the dream, and the sleep. And finally, he introduces that we are the unqualified substratum. By using the word unqualified substratum, he is saying that there is nothing there to qualify it. There is no mind to define it this way. There is no intellect to say it is this way. When everything is transcended and we come to the substratum, Bhagavan says that is the unqualified substratum underlying all these three states. Until that Sahaja, that unqualified substratum is reached, we need to keep inquiring, and with the grace of Master, it is certain that we will reach that unqualified substratum, which is our natural state. With the immense grace of Bhagavan, for the next 20 minutes, let us do Atma Vichara. Namo Bhagavate Shri Ramanaya. Over to Sharadaka.
Namo Ramana. Prostrations to Ramana, shining as a self in all beings. By the immense grace of that self manifest as Ramana, we are meditating upon his teachings, that is, self-inquiry, the understanding and practice. And we are understanding it through the words, through his answers to devotees, and through the answers codified by Ganapati Muni and brought together as the text Ramana Gita. Before we go on, I remembered the word which Dilip was asking for. It is when I said to myself the full shloka, Abhyasa kale sahajam sthitim prahur upasanam. The word is upasanam, which Bhagavan uses, which the Muni uses. During practice, when the sahaja sthiti comes and goes, it is called upasana. And when it is sthira, siddhim sthiram idagache, saiva jnanam tadochate, it is called jnana. When it is steady, it is called jnana. Until then, it is called upasana, says Bhagavan. And then he went on to say that jnana, what is the nature of that jnana? Vishayan samparityajya, with all objects being renounced, completely renounced, and abiding swasvabhavena samsthitaha, to be established in one's own true nature, is that great blazing fire of knowledge. Jnana jwala kriti prokta sahaja sthiti ratmanaha. That sahaja sthiti is one of the blazing fire of knowledge into which all the objects have been completely renounced. And when this happens, Bhagavan says, one is in the sahaja sthiti. The next question which the Muni had asked was, how will one know whether one has reached the sahaja sthiti or not? So Bhagavan says, Nirvasanena maunena sthirayam sahaja sthitau jnaninam atmanam nissandeha samarthayet. Without any doubt, he knows that he is in that state of steady abidance when he experiences that silence in which there are no vasanas. Nirvasanena maunena. Then he knows that he is steadily abiding in the self. Because it is the vasanas or the tendencies or the habits which push our mind outward. So normally, the vasanas are classified into being of three kinds. They are called Deha Vasana, Loka Vasana, and Shastra Vasana. Sadhu Om Swami says, please put me away, keep me away from all these three. Ramanadasa Sadananda says that in one of his songs. So, he says, these are the three which are classified. What are they? Deha Vasana. The tendency to identify oneself with the body and therefore to think about things related to the body. That becomes Deha Vasana. And what is lokavasana? Lokavasana is the tendency to think about the world, to be concerned about the world. We have so much of concern for the world, the situation in the world, what all is happening in the world, whether the right is happening or the wrong is happening. We are all the time worried about it. So, this tendency to be concerned about the world, to be thinking about the world, is called the Loka Vasana. Really speaking, that Loka means, the world means anything other than us is a world. Because if you are in a small mental or physical space, then your world is restricted only to that. There will be people who are thinking only about 2 or 3 other people in their lives. They don't think about anything beyond that. Because that's their world. Now, when their world expands, when they meet more people, when they interact with more people, when they become related to more people, their world expands to that world. And it can keep growing. That world can keep growing. When we read about the whole world, now we have a lot of information about what's happening everywhere in the world, and we can think about all that, we can be concerned about all that. Later, if we are in a position to have information about different planets, what's happening in Mars, what's happening in Pluto, what's happening right now, we know what we are concerned about what's happening in the United States or in the East or wherever, right? Or in different parts of India, or in different parts of Karnataka. It goes like that. Different parts of Bangalore, different parts of Karnataka, different parts of India, different parts of Asia, different parts of the whole world. What's happening? Why is it happening? Are right things happening? Are wrong things happening? All these concerns in our mind is Loka Vichara. Now the Loka could expand. It could be like, if we recognize that there are some things happening on, as I said, the other planets, then we might start wondering about why is this happening on Pluto? Why is this not happening on Mars? Why is this not happening on Earth? What is the relationship between these two? How is the divine activity manifesting in these different areas? We may wonder. Or if it spreads even farther, it can keep spreading farther and farther. It can be like, what is happening in this galaxy? What's happening in the next galaxy? But it's all one and the same thing. Or if I just want to know, why is my friend thinking about me like this? Or why is this happening in my friend's life? Or my relative's life? What is happening? So that's also Loka Vichara. And what are people thinking about me? That's also Loka Vichara. So whenever there is a thought about the other, when there is an other, that is Loka Vichara, says Bhagavan, and that is Loka Vasana. And then we have the Shastra Vasana, the knowledge, the tendency to gather knowledge, and the tendency to want to know. That, because it gives us a sense of power, knowledge gives us a sense of power, the very need to know. Of course, normally it is Shastra Vasana, is the tendency to study and study and study and study. And about Shastra Vasana, Bhagavan says, gives the story of the Roma Maharishi, who had a lifespan, very, 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 very long lifespan, equivalent to so many yugas, so many hundreds of yugas, so many hundreds of cycles of yugas. And he decided to study the Vedas, and he studied the Vedas, and he studied and studied, and his lifespan was coming to an end, and then he had not even finished studying one Veda, and then he requested the divine to give him one more lifespan, and still at the end of it, he was nowhere near finishing the study. Then he prayed for a third lifespan, and still he was nowhere near finishing his study, even of one Veda. And then finally, when he was just planning to ask for one more lifespan, Apparently, he was such a great Siddha that if he had asked, then God cannot say no. So before he asked, God decided to shower his grace, and then this Roma Maharshi had a dream. In that dream, he saw 4 huge mountains of sugar and a very, very monstrous, huge ant, which was quickly picking up sugar from one hill and transporting it to its home, wherever its place was. It was just picking up one grain after another, very fast, picking up, and taking this hill to another space. This was the dream which the divine gave to Roma Maharshi, and Roma Maharshi understood that this Shastra Vasana, to simply want to gather knowledge, is like merely transferring one hill of sugar from one place to another. It is important to taste what is said in the Shastra. So the Shastra Vasana, the need to gather knowledge, the need to know, is something which is innate in all of us. And in some people that may be more predominant, that the need to study and keep studying and keep gathering knowledge in whichever field. So that is one line. And then of course the Loka Vasana is there. The Loka Vasana which draws us actually, even our concern. Vishwanatha Swami once told my father, Sri R. Natarajan, he said, Natarajan sir, do you know compassion is also a bondage? It is also springing from the ego. So my father pondered about it. He told me, he shared this thought with me, that Vishwanatha Swami told me even compassion can be one of the manifestations of the ego. Why? Because it gives me that feeling that I have so much love in my heart for everyone. I have so much concern in my heart for everyone. It's a beautiful experience. But if I think it is for me and it is my love and my compassion, then it becomes binding, because it is not my love or my compassion. Love is the very nature of the self. Love is the nature of the self. It is not limited to my heart. It is not limited to my entity. So whenever, the same thing with knowledge, isn't it? Knowledge is a nature of the self. It is of the very nature of knowledge. It includes all knowledge. So when that is the nature of the self, if I have a tendency to want to gather something for myself or want to attribute something to myself, then I become limited. And then it may be said that this is a tendency. That is a difference between a tendency, like today's answer. Dilip continuously took our attention to the Sahaja, using Bhagavan's answer as the basis. In the Sahaja, Bhagavan says there is everything else is there. Activity is there. Thought is there. Everything else is there. Compassion, who can be more compassionate than Bhagavan himself? Compassion is there. But compassion is not mine. It is not my compassion. It is not my love. It is not my knowledge. It is not my body. And these are so many, this is a 3 vast areas of tendencies. And so far as the Loka Vasana goes, Bhagavan says, there is no other. There is nobody else. So where is the question? Where is the Loka? There is no other. There is no such division at all, he says. He cuts at the very root of the Loka Vasana. And more than that, he, as Nanda Kumarji often says, he bunches together, he puts it all together into one single Vasana. That is, I am this body. I am so and so. The aham vritti, the I thought, is the root Vasana. It is the very, very basis. It includes all other Vasanas. Actually, this Deha Vasana, we tend to think it is concern for the body. It is not just concern for the body. It is the very identification with the body. And from Deha Vasana only other Vasanas will come. If there is no Dehatma Buddhi, if there is no thought I am the body, if there is no thought I am an entity, where can there be any thought of a world or any knowledge of the world? And then afterwards, there is the question of gathering knowledge for oneself. For whom is the knowledge? For whom is the vision of the world? For whom is the perception of the world? So what Bhagavan does is to take everything to the root and make it one single vasana to cut. So we don't have to address millions of vasanas because there are millions of vasanas. We are meditating on Mother Alagamma's life, and it is said that in the last few hours of Mother Alagamma's life, Bhagavan sat with her and he washed away all the remaining tendencies of Mother Alagamma. Then I would think, where is there any hope for me? Bhagavan battled with Mother Alagamma's tendencies, is what the biographer of Mother writes. And I think it is A.R. Natarajan who has used that phrase. And it struck me, if Bhagavan is battling, what do I do if Bhagavan battled with mother's tendencies? Then it struck me that actually it is Bhagavan who is battling with all our tendencies also. It is Bhagavan who is doing everything for us. All he wants us to recognize is that it is his battle. It is not my battle. Everything is his. So through surrender, through recognizing that everything is his, one can get back to that state of repose in the self, of enjoying the self. Sombiyai summa sugamundurangidil, says Bhagavan in Ramanacentre. Simply sleeping in the self, or through persistent self-enquiry, wherein when one questions who am I, all the tendencies are combined and cut at. Immediately cut every time one questions who am I? Who am I? Who is this I? This I, if the Deha is a vasana, if the Loka is a vasana, if all these are only tendencies, if Shastra is a vasana, if all these are only tendencies, they are not the I. So who is the I? The I is the root tendency to identify with something. To identify with something, to limit oneself to something. But if that limitation is cut, in that identification of I am Sharada, if the Sharada is cut through the questioning, who am I? Then what remains is I am, which is the basis of everything. So Bhagavan says, all the tendencies will get absorbed into that being, into that I am. And that nirvasanena maunena sthirayam sahajasthitau. He has described the state of the jnani. That is the state of jnana. So when the vasana arises, we know that as yet it is not sthira. We know there is work to be done. That work is being done by the grace of Bhagavan. So let the work be done. Let us submit ourselves to allow the work of inquiry to go on by His grace. Let that work go on and reach its fruition. With that bhava, we repeatedly go back until, and that is the upasana, says Bhagavan. That is to discard all objects which are vasanas and to get back to the self, to get back to the steady abidance in that true nature by His abundant and ever flowing grace. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. Dilip?
Yes, Shraddha. Okay, there's no questions. There were some things I just wanted to check that. We'll commence the prayer. Akka. Apara Satchit Sukhavaridashi Yasyormimatram Bhuvanam Samastam Guhahitam Tam Ramanam Gaviram Chintavihiram Hridi Chintayami Chintavihiram Hridi Chintayami